So good morning. This week I begin actually a week of study leave, which a lot of ministers have. I've got like 5 books lined up that I have to get through and they're all kind of informed on my experience at General Assembly. I asked a lot of my close friends, minister friends, well, what book would be the one thing you would have me read this summer? So I've got that lined up. So originally I was not going to come today, but Sylvia twisted my arm and she goes, look, we want to just know what happened at General Assembly. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So, and then Paul, I didn't know back then, was coming. So I was very glad that you came and we could share the experience together. And so then he's sharing this with me as well. So General Assembly, I'm sure most of you, many of you probably know all about it, but I bet a lot of you don't. So let me explain. So General Assembly is the, can you hear me?
I don't think no.
I just need to be closer. There we go. I'm not really good at this. Get it closer. Or I can hold it, frankly. Story for all ages. You know how well I am at mechanical things. So here we go. How's that? If that works.
We can do this too.
All right. Well, I don't want to blast people out, so I'm not singing today. So General Assembly is essentially the Congress of the Unitarian Universalist Association for North America. So it's Canadian and U.S. And they rotate what city it's in geographically every year, so that because it's obvious that most people want to save expenses and drive there. So they try to make it in different locations so people can drive there and be a part of it. It's always the second to last week in June. And the way it works, there's first, they call it ministry days, which is Monday afternoon, Tuesday, and Wednesday through the afternoon, which it's ministry days. It used to be just ministers went, but they've expanded the definition of ministry so that it's basically the staff that's involved in Sunday morning, if you think of it that way. So it's ministers, directors of religious education, and music professionals come earlier, and we have our own program, and it's designed more for us and speakers and all that kind of stuff. So the reason that's important, because Paul will talk about a choir I was in. So I was in the choir of those folks, and we sang on a Wednesday morning service, and then there's a service on Thursday night when the General Assembly starts. It starts Wednesday night, and then on Thursday night, there's a service of the living tradition, which is focused on ministers, the ministers who have just newly been fellowshipped or have reached their final probationary period, ministers that are retiring, ministers who have just died in the last year. And so they have this choir, mostly made up of ministers, that sing for that. And I was on the back row, and I towered above the people around me from the camera angle. It looks like I'm about 5 feet above them. And I was into the music, and so I got a lot of FaceTime on this Megatron screen. So a friend of mine took a picture of it and then sent it to me, so I put it out on Facebook. Anyway, I get ahead of myself. So there's ministry days, and then there's General Assembly. And so it starts on Wednesday night and lasts through Sunday, like 5 o'clock. And the Wednesday night is just a celebration of all these congregations getting together. It's very congregation focused. And so that's manifested right from the get-go, because they have this really raucous music playing, and every congregation that's represented brings their banner. And it was so cool that you have a cool banner that Sylvia made, like, how long ago?
I don't know, 20 years ago.
20 years ago? It was so cool. So Paul and I marched in the parade with the banner, and we were, on television and on the big screen and all that kind of stuff, and it was a really cool thing. And then because Paul's last name starts with an A, when we were done, they wanted all the banners taken off their things, and they wanted to display them, and so we had to put them in the pile alphabetically. Well, because his last name starts with A, this banner was put up first. And so we were number 4 right out of the entrance to the Great Hall. So like thousands of people saw it every day, and I saw people stepping and looking at it. So kudos to you guys for having a banner and then letting us bring it. So Thursday, each night then you have a different service. So Thursday's focused on the ministry. Friday night is more of a bridging ceremony for the youth. It's more youth focused. Saturday night is the big Ware lecture. So it's the keynote speaker, and they always have somebody very famous come, and I forgot the name. I hope you have it in your part. She was a leader in the movement in Ferguson during the riots, and just incredible speaker. And then Sunday morning there's a big service that Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, our president, spoke at, and she was phenomenal. So I think you're going to talk a little bit more about that kind of stuff. But that's just the lay of the services. On top of that, there's plenary sessions, because this is the governing body of the UUA. And so there's always bylaws that maybe need to be changed, and things that they want to vote on that happens. And that's usually in the morning, and then in the afternoon there's all kinds of workshops. I mean, there's so many workshops, there's no way you could get to all of them, so you have to really pick and choose, and Paul did a great job of picking and choosing and reporting back to you. And then there's the exhibition hall, which is like this Unitarian Universalist trade fair, if you can imagine that. And so every organization in the Unitarian Universalist Association, all of the theological schools, and then all of the more liberal-leaning kind of organizations are there. And that's why I'm wearing this stole this morning. It's not like I'm trying to be high church, although I was so casual today I thought I needed something to identify myself as a minister. But there was a large contingent, rather large, 6, 8 people from the Appleton Fellowship were there. And there were 2 women who I mentioned that in the ministry days, on Tuesday night, we were going to do an act of civil disobedience, just the ministers, and it was all about prison reform. And the leaders were very, very organized. And we had training and said, you need to discern where you're going to place your body, because and there's red, yellow, and green. And red means you are going to be arrested. You are going to put yourself in harm's way, and you're going to be, we never found out in advance exactly where it was going to be and what it was going to happen, but I'm assuming it was blocking traffic on a street or something like that. You will get arrested. Yellow means you might get arrested, but more like your main purpose is to support the people who are getting arrested, and you promise not to leave the jail or wherever they are until the last person is out. And then green is, for whatever reason, you cannot be arrested or be in harm's way, but you want to support everybody chanting, you're going to stay on the sidewalk kind of thing. Well, this is the first time I had ever considered doing civil disobedience, so I kind of immediately said, well, I think I need to be green because I need to figure out what this is about. You know, I was chicken, frankly. Well, so I have a close ministers group that we talk every other week, and one person in my ministers group, she's from Mexico, and she just recently was naturalized as a U.S. citizen, but that doesn't mean it can't be ripped away. I didn't realize that. And so she goes, I can't do anything, I have to be green, although she wanted to be red. Another friend of mine, she's the minister at the Evanston, Illinois congregation, and she said, you know what, it's my opportunity to be red. I'm going to do this. And I thought about that on the way out on the plane, and I'm like, I could not leave Eileen in jail. That would be ridiculous. So I'm going to, when I get there, because you could change your mind, I'm going to be yellow. I don't care what it does. I think I can make my way through this. I can't imagine, like, oh, she gets arrested. I'm like, well, see ya. I'm going back to the hotel kind of thing. So I made up my mind to tell them I was going to do that. And when I arrived, we're partnered with a local organization that had planned all of this. And we were just basically the bodies that were going to show up and support them. It turns out that weekend, there had been a police shooting of African Americans in the exact spot where we were going to be. And so there was a lot of tension in town. And so the locals, so this is too much. We're still going to go to the location, but it's going to stay on the sidewalks, and it's just going to be chanting instead of putting a lot of people in harm's way in a space that seemed too much tension. And I've got to say, in the convention center all week, there were armed police officers walking around. We have there's an organization within the UUA called Black Lives UU. And they're there, and obviously their rhetoric is very anti-police, not specific policemen or women, but police the police state, if you will, and that. So it was a strange environment. What's that got to do with what I've got around my neck? So I had told some of the people from Appleton that I had decided also that I needed to get a stole because the only one I had was the one that I was ordained in. And if I'm going to be like thrown in the dirt or arrested, I'm not sure that I want that one to be ruffled up. So I said I need to get a stole. So these are fabric artist type people. So they self-appointed themselves the scouting group for Jim's new stole. And so they took me from booth to booth to booth in the exhibit hall for hours, and all these stoles that they had picked out. So this was one of them that I picked out, so I wanted to wear it today just for this. So that's kind of a summary of what GA is about. This year the theme was All Are Called, and these were the questions that they published that we were going to consider. It was who and how are we called to be at this time, individually and collectively? How are we called to act and to live? How does our Unitarian Universalist legacy strengthen us in living out our mission? And in what ways does our legacy present challenges and impediments to answering our call? So I've given you an idea of what stayed the same. This is like my 6th General Assembly. But one of the things that I noticed was different, and this started last year in New Orleans, is that there was a deliberate attempt, and it was stated, to bring the folks who have normally been at the margins of our society and within the Unitarian Universalist Association to the center, and really allowing basically non-white male folk to be in leadership positions, and this is the first year of the first woman ever elected the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and there's a lot of huge change that has happened. I have a lot of white male friends who feel like maybe we're being a little left out, and it's like, well, so what? I mean, get used to it, right? And so it was really cool to see who was up there, and it wasn't just people of color, it was gender fluid, all kinds of things, people that normally you'd never see up on stage leading, and it was really cool to see. And it was always cooperative leadership. It was never one person, it was always 2 or 3 people sharing leadership. So it's a completely different model, and they're still working it all out, but I'm really excited to see what I saw. So I love that Paul was there, because if you know anything about me, I'm the big visionary, big picture kind of thing. I'm at General Assembly to meet all the other ministers and people and feel the mood of the association. Paul loves detail. So he found, the only workshops I went to either had to do with the partner church group, because I'm leading a tour to Romania, Transylvania in November, and that's the group I'm leading, so it would be good to show up. And then the economic justice group and a network for social action networks, because we're trying to start up the Wisconsin Social Action Network. So I hung out with those groups mostly. Paul did a fantastic job of going to a lot of really technical and tactical workshops. So why don't you come up and tell them about it? And we'll see if we can deal with this mic. Do you want to hold it? Whoa!
Make an entrance.
Well, I'm Paul, and now you've seen the stole that Reverend Jim will wear when you visit him in the Fond du Lac jail.
It's reversible too if you need something more Pentecostal.
And of course, this is a banner that I was proud to carry. It's made of very heavy material, however, so I kind of pity the next person at the next GA who will carry it. But it is a fascinating first night where, how many churches? 800 churches carry their banners. And it seems like you walk about 5 miles. And what was unique about this is, of course, they could see Fond du Lac, if they've ever heard of Fond du Lac. And we got stopped, I don't know how many times, because it seemed like everyone there knew Reverend Jim. And they had to stop and say hello and shake his hand. So that was a unique. How many here have been to a GA? Raise your hand. Okay. So I have a brief sort of advertising message today regarding GA that I hope might encourage you to consider attending one in 2019 in Spokane, or 2020 in Providence, or 2021 in Milwaukee. All are welcome to attend online or in person. You can even be a delegate online from the comfort of your home. Delegates at home can submit dialogue to be read online for the discussion, and they can vote online. So there's no excuse for all of you essentially not being able to attend GA. The leadership of the National UU Association was on display in the general sessions. I was very impressed with everyone on the senior management team. They're a dynamic and they are a very inspirational group. 4 components really of GA stand out in my mind. GA is first and foremost a call to service. As Rev Jim said, we are all called. 2, GA means daily worship with powerful music. And 3, GA is a family reunion. And 4, it's all about education. Now, the general sessions were led by the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the first elected woman president of the UU Association. Several of her presentations underscored that this is not a time for a casual faith, nor is it a time to go alone. She emphasized that we affect change most through working in partnership with others. She made a national call to congregations to be on the street in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and to be in San Diego on July 12th, just as the UU leaders had been on the street in Charlottesville. Now, who was on the street yesterday from Open Circle? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fantastic. So, of the UU focus items at this assembly, I will just mention 2. And I think, to me, they came across as the 2 primary. One is that we are all called to dismantle the vestiges of institutionalized white supremacy. It's already been said this morning, but both inside the UU, because we're an old church and we have a lot of vestiges left, and outside. Because white supremacy is so deeply ingrained in our culture and in our institutions, it is very difficult to recognize all its facets without close examination. At the General Assembly, it was announced that a new study guide will be available to congregations this fall to help build a more multicultural UU. I did attend a workshop that I think was part of that package, and it was fantastic. It just pointed out things in our country and our institutions that really are generated by our prejudice that we don't think about normally. The other UU focus that I want to mention was that we are really called upon to address is the corruption of our democracy. Each member and each congregation are really called on to choose what's right for them to protect our democracy. They can do this in small ways, such as encouraging capable members to run for office, to do voter registration, and to provide poll watching personnel. There are many funds in the UU where they have a few dollars, and the Fund for UU Social Responsibility is awarding grants up to $500 between now and November to congregations that are working to register voters and to get out the vote. I thought that was very significant. GA means daily worship with inspiring music. I'll simply say that the worship services were great. There were 2 choirs, of which Jim was in one, very prominent in the back row, and it was made up of ministers. The second point, GA is really a family reunion. And I don't know, do you know how many people were there?
Well, they said 2,800, I think.
2,800? Well, so there were 2,800 people roaming through this big convention hall, UUing, as they call it. I'd never heard of UUing before. But I had the opportunity to listen to the attendees' many stories because of the dining arrangements primarily. The cafeteria set up in the convention center could seat over 600 people at round tables, each seating 10 people. I ate 9 meals at those round tables, listening to the dialogue of the members, clergy, and youth, and there were quite a few youth from across the U.S. What I observed was a very knowledgeable and committed national membership, much like ours at Open Circle. They're proud of their activities, but they consistently voicing lots of anxiety over the endless tumult of the Trump era. Finally, GA was all about education in the main tent, and education in over 100 breakout sessions, and education in the breakout area that Reverend Jim mentioned. I have a list of those sessions with me and a little thumbnail sketch of each and a website address of each. And they really represent a broad range of groups that have the information, tools, and insights to support congregations and members who implement programs in all this wide range of areas. A few of the examples were the UU Addictions Ministry, the UU Christian Fellowship, UU Humanists, Liberal Religious Educators, Outreach and Public Witness, UU Musicians, UU Partner Church Ministry, UU Women's Federation, UUs for Justice in the Middle East, and on in 100 exhibits. Unbelievable. So the bottom line is, if you have an interest, there's probably someone in change in some area. There's probably someone in one of these organizations that would love to work with you. Finally, there were around 100 breakout sessions. And I did attend one that I think I already mentioned on identifying, some of them were workshops. And that was a workshop on identifying our influences of prejudice in our culture. Another that I attended was an open Q&A with the treasurer of the UU Association, Tim Brennan, and 8 people showed up for that one. One of the discussions that he led in that little session we sat in a circle was about the UU endowment funds. The general church endowment holds the endowment funds up for many UU congregations. Those funds are not segregated, and they have expert advice, and some churches go to a wide variety of places with their endowment fund, but it isn't a bad place. I felt very comfortable with it. After that discussion, I went back to an exhibit that I saw in the main hall, and it's called the 2018-2019 Legacy Challenge Campaign. Under this Legacy Challenge campaign, if a church member makes a legacy gift of cash, securities, or other property like a house or a farm to be realized after they die, there is a cash match of 10% up to $10,000 per donor. This matching gift is paid immediately to the UU organization designated by the donor. So it really offers every church, every fellowship, the opportunity for immediate financial support for its operations or to grow its endowment. The campaign ends when it's used up its grant money, which was $5 million. So I thought if anyone has planned to leave something to Open Circle in their estate, if you do it in the next year, that's possible, you get 10% up to $10,000, which you could give to the church. Another breakout that I attended was called Growing Congregations for the 21st Century. It was presented by two enthusiastic members from All Souls Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This church has attracted virtual members throughout the globe. The session focused on the three words they used to summarize what their church offered new members. They called it the 3 C's: connection, compassion, and courage. I won't share any more about that other than part of the Q&A that followed their presentation. Question: name the most important one thing that attracts new members to your congregation. And where is BJ? There she is. BJ, what do you think the one thing they might... It was music, right. They said that's the most important thing to draw new members. Question, name another thing in attracting new members to your congregation. Answer, after the service, we have small group meetings, just like we do. Question, what is the best marketing program to grow a congregation? Answer, one-on-one marketing. I think that's Bev's answer here. Question, what is the best way to attract youth to the congregation? Answer, bring the music of youth into the church. So thank you for listening to my report. I hope many of you will attend one of the next GAs.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Like I said, he was a compliment to me. I mean, who goes to the treasury meetings, right? And then discovered a pot of gold there, so it was fantastic. I'll also say a quick thing about the Tulsa congregation. Tulsa, Oklahoma is the largest congregation, other than the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I was lucky enough in seminary to spend a whole week there and attended their worship. Its music knocks your socks off. So they have they have 3 services every Sunday morning, and each one is a different style. And so one of them is like ours, and they call that their transcendentalist service, so it's our hymnal, everything's the same. Then they break into 2 services after a little coffee hour. One is full-on UU gospel. And they've got the whole band up front, and I'm like, I went to that one because I'm like, how do you do gospel? So it was fantastic. And the other one is full-on humanist, and it's in they have an auditorium as well as a sanctuary, and in the auditorium, it's classical music and much more of a humanist message. It was fantastic. It was just amazing. So there's, you can do it in many directions, I guess is the way. I realize we're way over. Let me just summarize a few key things. There were some key votes taken, which I think were important. One is they voted to change all the pronouns in the bylaws to they, to be gender neutral. And it's really cool because we've been working on the bylaws here last winter, and I said, you know what, let's get rid of all this and make it they. And so we're already writing ours that way, so here we go. And then they also voted to give directors of religious education automatic voting rights. Ministers automatically get voting rights at General Assembly, and DREs didn't. And so they voted to give them automatic voting rights as well. Then there are always actions of immediate witness. And so the way this works is certain groups come in and they want to try to get everyone to vote for their action of immediate witness, meaning here's what we should focus on the next year, and it's a social justice issue. And there were, Paul, what, like 7 of them, something like that, and they were all very, very good. And so they had to vote. So this is one of the places where democracy probably doesn't work so well, because just because it got some of the votes more than another made it better. So, and moderators even said that everybody can work on any of these issues, but the 3 that got the top votes were these. End family separation and detention of asylum seekers and abolish ICE. So y'all did a bunch of stuff on that yesterday. Dismantle predatory Medicare practices in prisons and end prisons for profit. And the 3rd was we are all related, solidarity now with indigenous water protectors. So those are just suggestions. We are a congregation of loosely associated congregations, but this is a way to come up with what the membership feels like we should focus on in the next year. So we'll hear more about that. So that was a summary of GA. I'm sorry that we're way over, but it's been a very dynamic service this morning. We have our closing hymn. Mine says BJ's Choice. What is it, BJ? Number 121. We'll build a land. Please rise as your